Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on behalf of International Bipolar Foundation. I'd like to welcome and introduce our speaker today, Serena Goldsmith. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Serena is originally from the East Coast, New Jersey and Virginia, and moved to San Diego with her family at the age of 13. Serena graduated from San Dieguito High School in Encinitas in 1989 and received her Bachelor of Arts degree from Occidental College in Los Angeles in 1994 with a major in Sociology and a minor in Spanish. While attending Occidental, Serena developed serious physical and mental health symptoms and was diagnosed with two health conditions that greatly changed the course of her life: bipolar disorder and Crohn's disease. She has spent the past 20 years on a journey of discovery and recovery in order to find answers to how she could lead a healthy and meaningful life with these conditions. Based on what she has learned, Serena has been able to achieve a level of wellness that makes it possible for her to pursue her dreams and goals and to live a healthy and happy life. Serena currently works as a peer support specialist at North Coastal Mental Health Center in Oceanside and does individual and group counseling with clients diagnosed with what are termed severe and persistent mental illnesses. I will let you take it away from here, Serena, as she's telling her personal story. I'm sure she has quite a bit of information to share with you. So welcome. We're glad to have you today.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you to the International Bipolar Foundation for inviting me to do this webinar and giving me the opportunity to share my story. It's an honor to be with all of you this morning. As you can tell from my title slide here, I like butterflies. For me, they're a symbol of transformation, which is appropriate as I share with you my own story of transformation. There's a lot of information I'd like to cover, and I want to leave time for questions, so I'm going to jump right in. I have a lot more information that I'd like to share, but I won't have time to cover it all, so I'll have to cover some topics more briefly for today. So the overview of my talk, hey, it's not working now. Uh-oh, there we go. Okay, I'm going to talk about my journey from a life of enduring suffering caused by symptoms of Crohn's disease and bipolar disorder to a life of recovery and an experience of wholeness. I'm going to talk about how I was diagnosed, the symptoms I experienced, and how both conditions impacted each other. I'm going to share the things that I've learned on my quest for mind, body, and spirit health that have allowed me to become well and stay well, and more specifically, 8 wellness principles that I've implemented into my life on a daily basis. I'm going to talk about my life now a little bit and then have time for some questions and answers. So the title of my talk is A Story of Hope and Recovery, so I'd like to briefly discuss the word recovery. According to the dictionary definition, it's the act or process of becoming healthy after an illness or injury, or the act or process of returning to a normal state after a period of difficulty. For myself and with my clients, I prefer to use this definition that Recovery Innovations provides, and they're the organization that certified me as a peer support specialist, and they're based here in San Diego. Recovery is remembering who you are and using your strengths to become all that you were meant to be. The way I see it, recovery is a journey, not a destination. For me, it's not been a returning to a previous state or level of functioning, but a moving forward to places I've never been before. I wouldn't say I have arrived. I'm a work in progress, as I think we all are. I'm still not at the level of health that I want to be and where I believe I can be, and I plan to continue working on improving myself, hopefully for the rest of my life. That being said, I've definitely come a very long way from where I've been, and that's what I want to focus on today. So I want to show you just a few pictures from my childhood so you can get a sense of where I came from and my family. So that's me, just a couple months old. And another reason is to make the point about how mental illness can affect anyone from any and all backgrounds. Having a traumatic or an unhappy childhood is not a prerequisite to developing a mental illness, as some people may believe. I had a very happy childhood and came from a stable and loving family, yet still ended up having bipolar disorder. So as a kid, I liked school. I was a good student. I liked to play with my friends, roller skate, ride my bike, play tennis, ping pong. I like to sing. I've always loved music, and as you can see on the bottom, I like to play piano. I took lessons. I like to write poetry, short stories. I loved animals and nature. I've always been an animal lover. And I tended to be a serious kid. I thought about deep stuff like, why am I here? What's the purpose of life? That kind of thing at a young age. So here's a few more pictures of me a little bit older. The bottom right is me reading from the Torah at my bat mitzvah when I was 13, and that was a big deal in my family. And it was an honor to be considered a woman in my religion of Judaism. The middle is right before my prom at 16, and the bottom left is my family, my parents, and my younger brother, Jeremy, and me. I think I was about 17 in that picture. Maybe a little older, actually, because Jeremy he's 4 years younger than me, so he looks older than 13 in that picture. So I would like to talk about getting diagnosed now and what led up to that. Like Debbie mentioned, I was at Occidental College when I started having symptoms. And for my sophomore year, I went on a program to Mexico. It was the study abroad program. And while it was an amazing experience and adventure, I was subjected to several physical and mental stressors while I was there. I was staying up late, sometimes all night. We would be traveling a lot. Sometimes I get sick from the food and all kinds of things. There's a lot of air pollution. We were in Cuernavaca near Mexico City. So I became physically sick with bouts of diarrhea and other symptoms while I was there. And after coming home, I seemed to get worse. So because I had a inclination toward doing more natural things, and I had naturopathic doctors, I went to them first, and I wasn't getting better. In fact, I was continuing to get worse. So that was when I went to allopathic doctors, and they prescribed antibiotics, thinking that I must have contracted parasites in Mexico. And I still was getting worse. They didn't know what was wrong, what was going on. I started losing hope of getting better or even finding out what was going on with me. I ended up going into a very severe depression over the course of that summer, where I stopped eating, stopped sleeping, communicating, almost like a catatonic state. And I was hospitalized in a psychiatric unit of a hospital in San Diego. Put on a lot of psychiatric medications, a lot of antidepressants. Nothing was helping bring me out of the depression. And it was that point that they felt the mental health symptoms were more threatening to my survival than the physical symptoms. So eventually I was given 10 treatments of electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT. It's also been known as shock treatment. And it brought me out of the depression, but I did have substantial memory loss, which is a difficult thing to have, especially halfway through college. So after coming out of the depression, I was put back on antidepressants to prevent me from going back into another serious depression. And it was at that point that I had my first manic episode. And that was when I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 1. And at that point, I was prescribed mood stabilizer and an antidepressant to keep my symptoms within the stable range. It wasn't until about a year later that they finally figured out what was going on with me physically, and I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I was diagnosed with Crohn's based on the symptoms I was having, the results of a colonoscopy I had, and also my background being Eastern European Jewish. It's 4 times more prevalent among that population. So I want to briefly talk about the brain-gut connection. I always felt that developing symptoms of both conditions at the same time was not a coincidence, and that the two were somehow connected. Now, new understandings about the brain-gut connection are supporting that belief. Of course, not everyone diagnosed with one will have the other, but I have noticed a tendency among my clients dealing with bipolar symptoms to also have GI issues. So I'm just going to read this quote from the Harvard Health Publications that was published about 3 years ago. Psychology combines with physical factors to cause pain and other bowel symptoms. Psychosocial factors influence the actual physiology of the gut as well as symptoms. In other words, stress or depression or other psychological factors can affect movement and contractions of the GI tract, cause inflammation, or make you more susceptible to infection. And now there's a relatively new field called neurogastroenterology, and it encompasses the study of the brain, the gut, and their interactions with relevance to the understanding and management of gastrointestinal motility and functional gastrointestinal disorders. So obviously there is a connection between our brain and our gut, and they do often refer to the gut as the second brain. So I'm going to move on to Crohn's, just briefly give some information about it. So Crohn's is a serious illness that can have a major impact on a person's quality of life. The symptoms can be extremely disruptive to one's ability to lead a normal life. So Crohn's belongs to a group of conditions known as inflammatory bowel disease. Ulcerative colitis is also part of that category. According to Western medicine, there's no cure for Crohn's disease. Doctors believe it to be a chronic autoimmune inflammatory condition of the GI tract where the person's immune system becomes overactive and continuously attacks the intestine for unknown reasons. Doctors also believe that diet and stress may aggravate it, but they do not cause the disease on their own. Recent research suggests heredity, genetics, and/or environmental factors contribute to the development of the disease. And as I mentioned, for genetics, I do have the Jewish background that makes me more susceptible. So this is a list of symptoms, and I'm not going to read through all of these, but I'll just highlight a few things. So during my flare-ups, the third bullet point down that I listed, the urgent need to move bowels, often prevented me from being able to leave the house. And if I did, I would have panic attacks while driving in my car due to fear of not making it to a restroom in time. I had to know where every restroom was at all times, no matter where I was. Also, it was very difficult to know what was okay to eat and what wasn't. There's a lot of conflicting information out there about this from experts, doctors, GI doctors, nutritionists, etc. So a lot of the time I would have no appetite, and even if I was able to eat, I often couldn't absorb nutrients because of the inflammation in my intestine. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about bipolar disorder as far as the facts about it. I won't spend a lot of time on this slide because most of you probably know a lot of this information, and it's information you can easily find online as well. So I would like to focus more on the things that have helped me and on your questions, but I'm going to highlight the last two bullet points, which is that many people are able to live full and productive lives with bipolar disorder, and there is a strong link between bipolar disorder and creativity, which I studied that link for my undergrad thesis at Occidental, and I learned a lot about that, so that could be one positive thing about the disorder. And here's a list of some famous and successful people. So obviously these people have contributed a lot to society. There's artists and actors and astronaut, and there's a few more, Mark Twain and Jean-Claude Van Damme. So I sometimes say to my clients that we're in an elite club, and if we're able to channel our energies, we can create and achieve great things. How having bipolar disorder and Crohn's disease affected my life. So bipolar disorder has definitely been more disruptive to my life than Crohn's disease, and that's saying a lot about the severity of my bipolar symptoms, because obviously Crohn's disease can be very disruptive to someone's life. I'm a NAMI presenter for the In Our Own Voice program also, and there was a woman in the video that we show that says, I would rather give birth to 15-pound twins than go through a serious bout of depression. And I think I would agree with that, as far as I'd rather have a severe Crohn's flare-up, which is extremely painful, than go through a bout of serious depression. Symptoms related to both conditions, but more due to the bipolar symptoms, caused me to lose many jobs, relationships, friendships, money, my health, my freedom, and my hope for the future. It was very difficult to manage both conditions at the same time. Sometimes when one was okay, the other would be an issue. And as I read in that brain-gut connection, when psychologically I wasn't doing well, it definitely have a direct impact on my intestine. I felt like I kept getting knocked down just as I was getting my life to move in a positive direction again. And much of my life seemed to be about enduring suffering, just trying to get through each day. I was hospitalized for bipolar symptoms 8 times over the last 20 years, and most were for mania and were very long hospitalizations because my manias tend to be very long and severe. I've been hospitalized for Crohn's disease twice. The second time in 2006, I almost died due to having a C. diff infection on top of a severe Crohn's flare-up. So next slide. Now I'd like to talk a little bit more about mania. And this is a bumper sticker that I saw on a car while driving on the freeway. I don't suffer from insanity. I enjoy every minute of it. And at least in the beginnings of mania, this describes it pretty well for me. So here's a list of symptoms. And I would say that mania has always fascinated me. It was quite an amazing state to experience, although for me it left a lot of destruction in its wake. I compare it to fire. It can be beautiful and powerful, but also very dangerous and destructive. In the beginnings of mania, I would feel that my creative abilities were greatly enhanced, but as the mania would progress, sometimes over a period of months, I would be incapable of completing a creative project or any task for that matter. My mind would race so fast that it was impossible to stay focused on any one task long enough to complete it. So I'd like to share with you a journal excerpt called My Description of Mania that I wrote many years ago. The general feeling was one of expansiveness, excitement, adventure, freedom. But then it would go beyond that to a sense of being all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-present, like how I think of God consciousness. I believe it differs from a truly spiritual awakening or experience of enlightenment because I would take my ego with me. While in a manic state, I would leave clues for myself, knowing that when I came out of it, I wouldn't remember all of the incredibly paradigm-shifting ideas and enlightened thoughts that would save the world. I felt a strong urgency about my sense of mission, although I didn't completely know what it was. I felt that I was responsible for the fate of the world. I often felt that I had the ability to speed up and slow down time, as well as having other superpowers. And also, being in full-blown mania caused me to do some dangerous things. Just as a few examples, there was one time when I went into the ocean with all of my clothes on in the middle of the night, and there was no one around, and I was just mesmerized by the beauty, how beautiful the sky was and the waves were and the stars. And I gave no thought to the possibility that I could get knocked down by a wave and drown, and there was no one there to save me. There was another time when I was in full-blown mania when I was wandering through a neighborhood in the middle of the night in the rain, barefoot, and again, just looking at the beauty of everything. Everything seemed so amazingly beautiful. I felt one with the universe, and I ended up ringing someone's doorbell at like 1 a.m. So obviously that's not a necessarily safe thing to do or a very considerate thing. But after that, I went to the hospital. They called the police, and they were very nice people. And there's so many other stories I could share, but in the interest of time, I'm going to have to move on. So once in full-blown mania, I'd end up in the psychiatric unit of a hospital one way or another. So whether it was my parents taking me or the police taking me in handcuffs in the back of a patrol car or by ambulance, I would end up in the hospital. During one of my very intense manias when I was in the hospital, I was put under temporary conservatorship and lost my rights to make my own decisions. I could no longer refuse any medications or treatments that the doctors felt were warranted. That gives you an idea of how severe my manias could become, because luckily one doesn't have their rights taken away that easily, at least in this country, and conservatorship is not granted lightly. I would experience complete physical, mental, and emotional depletion after having a mania for a certain amount of time. And I really don't know how my body survived such long and high manic episodes where I went for weeks or even months with no sleep or very little sleep and ate very little. Eventually, my exhaustion would catch up to me, and that was usually when I would crash into a very severe, long-lasting depression, sometimes 4 times as long as the manic episode lasted. So, for example, one mania I had was 6 months long, which turned into an over 2-year depression. So I'd like to talk more about depression. And here's a list of symptoms of depression. I'm going to share a poem I wrote. It was actually from a journal I was keeping. It was a while ago, not that long after I was diagnosed, actually. Maybe if I write it down, I'll feel better. Yet my pain eludes my pen. It is too hard to capture with words. It goes beyond language, pouring forth from an ancient wellspring that existed before words. A longing so deep, a feeling so empty, a sadness so profound. There are no words to contain it. It flows out from them, filling the words and spilling over them, flowing beyond them, drowning me in a black despair. So I'll go back to the slide if you want to look at the symptoms. So when I've been in a serious depression, I felt an overwhelming feeling of being completely incapable of functioning and surviving in this world on my own. It was often too difficult to do my basic activities of daily living, what we call ADLs, such as taking a shower or even preparing a simple meal. Depression would attack and paralyze me from the inside out. I felt as though it had taken over my body, mind, and spirit, and I felt powerless to fight back. I couldn't feel my connection to God and felt as though God had abandoned me. I felt completely alone and like no one could reach me or understand what I was experiencing. It was when I felt there was no way out and I couldn't endure the suffering any longer that I attempted suicide. I think it was a combination of survival instinct, a desire to not hurt my family, and a spark of hope inside me that made me stop myself. I never thought about suicide as an option ever since then. Go through here. Something in me knew that I had to find another way to cope with my suffering and bring myself out of it. And eventually I did. I can't tell you how grateful I am now that I didn't take my own life back then. I'm so grateful for every moment and every day that I have now. What a tragedy it would have been for me and for my loved ones if I hadn't stopped myself. And what a tragedy it is for so many and for their loved ones who take their own lives because of depression. So there's a couple of books I'd just like to recommend. Graham Cowan, Back from the Brink, surveyed about 4,000 people in mental health recovery with bipolar or depression to learn what had helped them the most. And he also interviewed famous people, which is in his book. Something really cool on his website, it's iambackfromthebrink.com, is that you can sign up for the 30-day mood boost challenge where he sends you a daily email with tips to help improve your mood. So I definitely recommend that book. I actually met him last year when he did a lecture for International Bipolar Foundation. And the other book I have here is Suicide: The Forever Decision, for those thinking about suicide and for those who know, love, or counsel them. And this book is available as a free ebook on the website qprinstitute.com/forever. And all of the books and websites I mentioned, I do have a list of them that I can email to you if you'd like that later. So QPR is Question, Persuade, Refer, and that's a training on how to help someone who's thinking about suicide. So this is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. If you or someone you know is thinking about suicide, you can call 1-800-273-8255 or go to www.suicidepreventionlifeline.org. So I'd like to just share a little bit about the interplay of Crohn's and bipolar for me. So both conditions did start at the same time. And it's likely that I have a genetic predisposition for both, as mental illness and depression runs in my family. I don't know of any particular family member that was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, but it's possible that there were some who just were not diagnosed. And like I mentioned before, Crohn's disease is 4 times more prevalent among Eastern European Jews. So when I would have pain with the Crohn's disease, it would affect my mood in negative ways. I'd feel more depressed, I'd feel more down. And also my mood instability would have a negative effect on my intestinal health. So when I was manic, I disregarded taking care of my physical health. When I was depressed, I was unable to do things like exercise or attend to my basic needs. And exercise is one thing that can be really helpful for Crohn's disease. And stress definitely worsened both conditions. And also healing one condition led to healing the other. So I like the perspective of integrative medicine where they look at the whole person, a holistic approach to healing, and see that all of our parts, mind, body, and spirit, interconnect and affect each other. So these are 2 books that I would recommend for healing Crohn's and bipolar, and these books really helped me on my path, kind of as putting all the puzzle pieces together of things that I had found out on my own. And a couple years ago, I discovered these 2 books. Self-Healing Colitis and Crohn's by Dr. David Klein. Dr. Klein healed himself of ulcerative colitis, when he was in his 20s after suffering severe symptoms for about 10 years and almost losing his entire colon. In 1984, he found a nutritionist and doctor of natural hygiene who introduced him to the concepts of self-healing and eating a fruit-based diet, which ultimately healed his condition. Since then, he's been guiding, coaching, and mentoring others with GI-related health issues to help them achieve vibrant health. And when I first started his program, he worked with me, he mentored me over the phone and through email to help me. The beginning can be a little bit challenging sometimes, so he was a great help. His website is colitisandcrohnscenter.com. And Susie Hoseas wrote Healing Bipolar and Depression, and I was introduced to her by Dr. Klein. She was diagnosed with bipolar disorder in the early 1980s and was hospitalized and told there was no cure for her and no hope. She endured 20 years of medications and several hospitalizations, but like Dr. Klein, she found answers for herself involving similar diet and lifestyle changes that Dr. Klein was using. Today, she's symptom-free and is able to help others with bipolar become well. So reading her book and speaking with her helped give me the confidence that I was on the right path when I first started on this diet and lifestyle. So now I would like to move into the 8 wellness principles that have contributed to my recovery. Changing my thoughts and beliefs, knowing myself, healthful eating, sleep, stress reduction and cultivating mindfulness, exercise, working, support system, and social outlets, and finally, spirituality. So changing my thoughts and beliefs. I put this first because I believe our thoughts have such a profound effect on our lives. And looking for the strawberry was something that my mom taught me growing up, to always look for the good in every situation, no matter how challenging, difficult, or dire the situation seems to be. And positive self-talk is so important, and it has had such a profound effect on my life. Negative self-talk can be hard to change because it's often a habit. So first I had to become aware of what I was repeatedly saying to myself, and then I had to constantly work on changing the negative messages to positive ones until it became a habit. It's definitely an ongoing process. Of course, I still say negative things to myself, but now I'm able to catch it and change it quickly. And especially with depression, it's very common to have those constant negative thoughts running around and around in your head. The strong motivation to be well, that definitely propelled me to keep doing the things that I needed to do to get better. My identity. I had to learn that I am not my illnesses. They are just one part of my life. Even though they were major preoccupations for me for a long time, they don't define me. Everyone has his or her own challenges that they face in life. I discovered that I'm a whole and valuable person who has a lot to offer to this world, and I became stronger in that concept of myself as time went on. And so related to that is recovery language, and that's why I think using recovery language is so important. It may seem like a subtle difference to say that person is bipolar versus that person has bipolar, but to me, language can make a big difference in how I feel about myself and how I think about myself. When we refer to someone as a bipolar or a schizophrenic, we are making their whole identity synonymous with their illness. I've learned that I'm not bipolar, I have bipolar disorder, and that's a big difference. So these are some books about how to change your beliefs, and there are so many other books out there to help with changing thoughts and beliefs, and these are just a few that I've used myself. Louise Hay is a big proponent of positive affirmations, and I found that very helpful for me to put affirmations on Post-its and stick them on my bathroom mirror and read them every morning and every night while I'm brushing my teeth. Second thing is knowing myself. So now when I feel manic energy stirring, I know what to do to bring myself back down and become grounded again. I think the combination of my motivation to stay well and the knowledge of what to do when I feel out of balance has prevented me from having any more manic or depressive episodes or hospitalizations since 2009. For the Crohn's and bipolar, I know how to tune into myself and my body and then give myself what I need to get back into balance. With my current schedule as busy as it is now with working, being in a master's program, and doing more speaking, it can be a constant challenge to stay in balance and practice my self-care, but I do the best that I can, and so far, so good. When I push myself too much and get a cold or I don't feel good, I'm now able to bounce back quickly as long as I give myself the chance to rest and recover. So these are just some examples of coping skills that are on my list. Everyone has a different list of what works for them. So spending time with my cat Pumpkin, going for a walk, calling a friend if I'm feeling down or lonely, writing in my journal, going for a drive, sometimes just getting out of the house is enough to change my perspective, laying in the sun, inventing a new healthy dish, and changing my self-talk, which I already mentioned. So I just have to put, I had to put my cat on here, Pumpkin, because she's definitely one of my biggest coping skills. And when I was depressed, she was the one thing that could bring a smile to my face when nothing else did. Animals can be such amazing healers for us, even when they bite you sometimes, like Pumpkin does. But if you see the top right one, she's laying, I had to take all the clothes out of my closet when it was getting fixed. And she, if you look at her face, she's like defiant, but she's on top of all my black clothes. I think she knew that her fur would show up the most on my black clothes. Number 3, healthful eating, following a special diet. So I put a lot on this slide because people always want to know about the diet I follow, and they ask me lots of questions about it. Food is definitely a hot topic in our society. And there's so much conflicting and controversial diet and nutrition information out there that no wonder so many people are confused about what they should eat. I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionist, so all I'm qualified to talk about is what has worked for me. When people ask me for advice about diet, I believe it's important to find what works best for you. As a general rule of thumb, though, I think it's safe to say that it's best to eat as little processed foods as possible and add as many fruits and vegetables into your diet as you can. I believe in buying organic produce as much as I can for health and environmental reasons, and during my first year on this diet, I got blood tests on a regular basis to make sure all my levels were good. So I follow Dr. Klein's Healing Program diet. I eat a low-fat, mostly raw vegan diet. I eat raw fruits and vegetables and greens, actually, fruits and greens, until around 4 p.m. For dinner, I have vegetable salads, lightly steamed veggies, and or fatty foods, but only 3 to 4 times a week, and not that big of an amount, so like a half of avocado or an ounce or 2 of nuts or seeds for the whole day, and then not every day. And once in a while, if I feel like I'm wanting grains, I'll have some gluten-free grains, just like quinoa or rice or oatmeal, but only occasionally. I follow food combining principles based on natural hygiene philosophy. I experiment with different foods and combinations to see what works for me, and I try not to eat any processed foods, including refined oils and salt. So these are some pictures of a few typical meals. These are the pictures I've taken, except for the green smoothie one, which I got because my smoothies I don't put in fancy glasses like that usually. So I love salads. I make all different combinations of greens with fruits and greens with veggies and homemade dressings. They now taste amazing to me. I don't even need dressing anymore because my taste buds have adjusted to tasting the amazing flavors of fruits and vegetables. It's food that is so fresh, vibrant, colorful, and full of life. A previous GI doctor told me that I should never eat salads or raw vegetables because they're too hard to digest for someone with Crohn's. At least for me, that's proven to be untrue once I got through the initial healing phase, and I know Dr. Klein and his thousands of successful and healthy clients would agree. Eating this way has also made a huge difference in my mood. My default mood is now joy, happiness, and appreciation, but grounded and not manic. And that's Cielo on the bottom right. He's my friend's green cheek conure, and he's enjoying our kale confetti salad as well. The next thing I would like to talk about is sleep. And sleep is so important for healing because it's when our bodies do their regeneration and repair work. And of all the things that I've struggled with, the ability to get enough sleep is still an issue for me, but I'm doing much better with it than I used to. The fact that I'm now off prescription sleeping pills after taking them for most of my adult life, and I'm sleeping better now without them, is a huge accomplishment for me. I could probably devote a whole webinar just on this topic alone and how insomnia and bipolar disorder are interrelated. International Bipolar Foundation actually had a webinar on January 7th of this year with Dr. Colleen McClung about her research relating to biological clocks and bipolar and why it was so important to regulate your circadian rhythms to manage your mood. It was really fascinating research, and I highly recommend that webinar if you're interested in this topic. And on the slide are just some tips for good sleep hygiene, which is pretty easy to find a lot more information online about that. The next thing, stress reduction and cultivating mindfulness. So, especially with my busy schedule, stress reduction techniques are really important to me. I try to do deep breathing when I'm feeling extra anxious or rushing, and this is something I can do wherever I am, at my desk at work, while I'm driving. Just taking deep breaths into my lower abdomen really helps calm me down. Yoga, 10 to 15 minutes every morning. Meditation, even sometimes just sitting with my eyes closed for 5 minutes can make a huge difference. Listening to relaxing music, getting massages, exercise, and sunbathing. Those are some of my tools for cultivating mindfulness and reducing stress. And these are a couple of my favorite relaxation CDs. I listen to Aria's Heaven Guide Me CD every time I'm driving in my car in order to bring me back to center and feed my mind positive messages and affirmations. For me, singing my affirmations is even more powerful than speaking them. I use Faraway Places Within for meditation, yoga, relaxation, and going to sleep. If you go to her website, aria.com, you can hear samples of all of her songs. And Yoga for Digestion Perfection is a DVD that Annette Davidson created, and she's Dr. Klein's wife, and she created this routine for healing GI issues in particular. She personally healed herself of Crohn's disease using Dr. Klein's program and practicing yoga regularly. I incorporate a lot of her yoga poses into my own daily morning yoga routine. Okay, so even though I briefly had mentioned exercise on the stress reduction slide, I wanted to have a whole slide for it also because it's been such an important part of my recovery. And I definitely feel at my best when I exercise daily, but because I often don't have a lot of time in my day between work, school, and studying, I've been focusing on exercises that I can do in short periods of time, but that are still effective. So things like jumping rope, squats, push-ups, and interval training. And when I do have time, I like going for long walks, or I alternate walking and running. This is a book, The Exercise Cure, by Dr. Jordan Metzl. And one of his points is that if exercise were a pill, it would be the most sought after and effective medicine in the world and would have no side effects. So incorporating exercise into my life has definitely been an important thing. Working support system and social outlets. So this is a lot of things to cover in one, as one principle, but it relates to having a sense of meaning and purpose in my life, especially working, going back to work, and as a peer support specialist. So peer support is people have lived experience with mental illness, and they receive training to do counseling and to help people receiving mental health services or struggling with mental health symptoms. And working as a peer support specialist has definitely greatly accelerated my own recovery and has opened many doors for me. Another good thing about it is that while I'm helping others, I'm constantly reminding myself of wellness and recovery principles. So I'd like to thank North Coastal Mental Health Center and Mental Health Systems and all peer support employers for employing peer supporters and recognizing that peer support is a valuable addition to mental health services. And I'd like to give a shout out to everyone at North Coastal who's watching this right now at the clinic. I'm also very excited to see how peer support is expanding nationally, and working as a peer support specialist led to my decision to go back to school to get a master's degree in social work. If you're interested in becoming a peer support specialist, you can find information online depending on where you live. In San Diego, Recovery Innovations is the organization that trains and certifies peer support specialists. So my family, I'm very lucky to have been born into a loving and supportive family that has stuck by me through all of my trials and tribulations. I realize that not everyone is blessed with a family like that, and so that is when I recommend focusing on developing a very strong support network for yourself, of people that you can count on. I've also been blessed to have some amazing, wonderful, supportive, and loyal friends in my life, and in being the best friend that I can be to others, it's definitely come back to me several-fold. The importance of social support networks. So International Bipolar Foundation has a lot of information on their website about support groups, resources, and other ways to develop a strong support network, including new mobile apps. So the last wellness principle I'd like to talk about is my spirituality. And I've attended a center for spiritual living for many years, which is my spiritual home. Belief in a higher power brought me strength during times of suffering and difficulty. Also, my spirituality provided me a belief that there was an important purpose for my life. From a spiritual perspective, I was able to reframe my challenging experiences as preparation to fulfill my mission in life of helping others. I learned to trust in and surrender to God's plan for my life and get out of my own way. So my life now, it's more wonderful than I could have ever imagined it to be, and I don't take being in good health and feeling good for granted. I so appreciate it. I feel better physically and mentally than ever before, even compared to before I got sick. Even though it's stressful at times, I'm excited about being back in school again after graduating with my bachelor's degree 20 years ago and working towards a Master of Social Work degree at California State University, San Marcos. Go Cougars. My goal is to become a licensed clinical social worker and to contribute to the mental health recovery movement on a large scale. I've discovered that I really enjoy giving talks and presentations about mental health recovery, and more opportunities such as this one have been opening up for me. I plan on writing a book about my story and recovery tools to help others, but I can't make any promises about when that's going to be done. I feel confident and strong, knowing that what I've been able to overcome and that now I can get through anything. I have a sense of empowerment now. If my level of health starts to decline, I know exactly what to do to bring it back. I no longer feel like a victim of my own brain and body. Now I'm the one in charge. I'm excited about my future. I feel that the sky is the limit. So to conclude, I'd like to share one of my poems with you entitled The Journey. I think it sums things up pretty well, and plus it rhymes, so you can't beat that. At the beginning of my journey, I didn't really know the trials that lay ahead for me and how the sun would come and go. And when it was gone, there were some dark, dark times that I didn't think I would survive. And other times when the pain was so great, I prayed to not be alive. But somehow in the darkest hours, a small ray of light would shine through, and I would find the strength to choose to go on and face the day anew. So then I thought, I just need to figure out how to heal these mental and physical conditions. Then I can finally live my life and get on with my life's mission. But I realized after some time on my path that my life had not been on hold, that all of those experiences labeled as illness were worth more to me than gold. For they brought me gifts and wisdom and allowed me to give hope to others on their path of healing and show them how to cope. So with a trusting heart, I accepted myself and realized the truth of me. And now that I know who I truly am, I'm so grateful for my journey. So thank you for taking the time out of your Wednesday morning to attend this webinar and hear some of my story. I hope something that I shared was helpful for you or for someone you know. Once I have my book written, I'll be able to go into a lot more depth on all the topics I could only touch on today. In the meantime, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, either now or later by email. And if you would like my list of recommended books and websites, you can request it by email. If you email me and I don't reply right away, please be patient. My schedule is very busy, but my intention is to reply to everyone. And I would just like to show the International Bipolar Foundation donation slide because they provide wonderful free programs such as this webinar series, in addition to lectures, resources, research, education, and support to help people with bipolar and their families and caregivers. I refer my clients and people who need resources to the website often, and it is chock full of great information. Donations help them continue to do the valuable work that they do, so please consider donating if you can. Thank you. And now I'm open to questions, so Debbie will let me know if you have any questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Serena, for sharing your story with all of us. I do have a number of questions, so I will get right into those. The first
Okay.
question is the creativity for you only present during manic episodes or during mania?
Oh, that's an interesting question. No, it's not. It's present at other times and more, especially now that I'm feeling so much better. I'm able to follow through on the creativity that I feel, whereas in manic episodes, I often, like I shared, like at the beginning, I was able to, but then as it progressed, I really couldn't express the creativity in any way that other people could appreciate it. So yeah, I would say now I'm even feeling more able to be creative in all different areas of my life than I was in a manic episode.
Wonderful. Thank you for that answer. The next question is, first of all, a comment. Thank you for sharing your story and your positive self-talk in the new identity or self-concept. This person is wondering if there were any specific triggers for your 8 hospitalizations.
Some of them I can identify and some of them I can't. Um, some of them were due to going off medications. Like in my 20s, I would feel if I could prove to myself and to other people that I would, do okay without the medication, then it would prove that I didn't really have this condition. So there were a few times when I took myself off of medication and ended up, maybe not right away, but maybe 6 months later in the hospital with a manic episode. Other times there were things that happened, sometimes positive things that I would get very excited about, and I also noticed a pattern with hormonal changes. So certain times of the month I was more susceptible to go into a manic episode. But yeah, sometimes it was hard to know what triggered it.
Great, thank you.
Did I answer the
Next
question? Okay.
question.
Yeah.
Let's see, I think, hang on, it's still typing.
Okay.
Um, Lots of comments. Thank you for the inspirational speech. It has inspired me to cook a healthy veggie meal instead of an easy takeout. That's a nice comment.
Yay.
Let's see. Are you currently on any medication?
I am. I'm on one medication for bipolar disorder and one medication for Crohn's disease. Because I'm doing so well now and I've been able to incorporate so many other wellness tools into my life, I've been able to gradually decrease the medication for bipolar, and now I'm on one mood stabilizer and the half usual dose, adult dose of it, and doing well on that smaller dose. Before this, when I was not doing this well or knowing the things that could help me, I was on as many as maybe 6 or 8 different medications, including sleeping pills and antipsychotic medications and mood stabilizers and antidepressants. So I would say over the last 23 years, I've probably been on almost all medications that have ever been used for bipolar disorder, and some that aren't supposed to be used, but doctors think they could help. Yeah, so I understand. I have a personal knowledge of many different medications, and I'm very grateful to be at a point where I don't need very much of it to stay well. And medication, people often ask me, well, do you think I shouldn't take medication or that I definitely should be on it? And it's a very personal choice, and I'm not one to, it's not my place to tell someone that. They need to work with their doctor and make the decision that's best for them. But I do recommend becoming informed about the medications that your doctor is suggesting and do your own research and work with your doctor. Hopefully it's a doctor that you feel comfortable with, that you trust, and that the doctor is open to your concerns. Oh yeah, and for the Crohn's medication, I'm on a very mild medication, and hopefully we'll be able to not be on any medication for that at some point.
Wonderful. Thank you for that information. I think that's a very often inquired about question in terms of medicine, and as oftentimes it is working for a while and stops working, or you're constantly trying to find the right balance. So definitely appreciate
Right.
the advice of of chatting with your psychiatrist and doing your own research and really being self-aware as you are. This could be a process.
Yes. I mean, for me, look, it's 23 years later. So it wasn't an overnight thing where I was able to just stop medication and be fine. I needed the medication to help me get to where I am now.
Great, thank you. The next is a comment and also related to your book. They say your story is extremely inspirational and the information is fabulous. And when will you be writing your book, or do you have a date in mind for
writing? I wish it was soon, but I can't promise anything. My schedule is so busy right now with school and work. So I would love for it to be within 6 months, but I really have no idea at this point. The thing is, I have a lot written that I could use to just kind of put a book together, but knowing me and my perfectionist tendencies, it's going to take me a while to actually feel good about something that I'd want to get published. So like I said, in the meantime, I'm happy to answer questions or direct people to resources.
Great, thank you, Serena. The next question, many people talk about importance of motivation to get well, but my son is only motivated to get well when he is well. When he has stressors in his life and becomes depressed, he starts self-medicating, becomes non-compliant with his meds, etc. How can support systems such as family, friends help him stop this cycle? Like you mentioned, when he feels better, he thinks he can stop the medications.
Yeah, I definitely experienced that myself, and I don't know how old he is, and I think that is a factor as far as, what could support him. I know when I've gone through depressions, the motivation is so not there to do anything or even think that there's any hope that anything I try would help me. So depression is a very difficult thing to come out of, and I would say if he can be around other people who have experienced it and are doing well now, that can be helpful no matter what age you are. Support groups, getting in touch with people online or whatever ways you can find people to connect with. Luckily, substance abuse was not something I've had to deal with, and I know that just compounds the situation. And self-medication is a very common thing for people when you're having symptoms, and a lot of people turn to that. And so that, like I said, adds another dimension to it, and I would suggest just getting help for that if he's willing to, if he gets to the point where he realizes this is not helping him get to where he wants to be. But it's a difficult thing. I totally understand how difficult it can be, and sometimes for me, the affirmations or writing things down and reading them while I was depressed of what I do want to accomplish in my life could help remind me that it's worth doing everything I possibly can to take baby steps toward coming out of the depression. So there's a lot more I would have to know the specific situation and the person to give more specific advice, but that's my general advice.
Thank you, Serena. The next question, have you worked other jobs before beside the PSS, and was it hard to hold down a job? And also, second question within, is the stress from school manageable currently?
Don't ask me that today, but maybe tomorrow I'll have a different answer. So the first thing, have I had other jobs? Yes, I have. My work history has been disrupted a lot because of my symptoms of both conditions. I know I've worked mostly for doctors in the past as a medical office manager. I've often preferred to work for more integrative or alternative health doctors. And I know there was one job I took, and part of what made me comfortable about it was the ladies' room was directly across the hall, and that was when my Crohn's symptoms were pretty bad. So I've had to, consider things that a lot of people don't have to think about when at a job situation. What was the second part again? Oh, stress of school. So yeah, there's times like when major papers are due, such as next week, that stress, increases when we have midterms and finals and that. And I'm pretty new to school. I've been now it's just been 7 months about. I started in the fall for a 3-year part-time MSW program. So it just really emphasizes the need for my self-care practices and reminding myself that I have to do that. I have to take breaks and do my stress reduction techniques. But it's definitely hard. I mean, it's a balance that, like I said, I'm not perfect, and it's an ongoing process, and I'm learning as I go. And because my sleep issues are still there, that adds another kind of challenge to it when I can't get enough sleep and then I have a busy day facing me. But I just do the best I can, and yeah, so far I haven't had to ask for special accommodations.
Great, thank you. There's another comment here. Thank you, Serena. You're a shining star in the world of bipolar, and your success is an inspiration to all.
Thank you.
Let's see. And it looks like the balance are comments. I'll read a couple more.
Oh, wow.
Let's see. I admire and adore you and your talk. Thank you very much for the inspiration. And they want to know if you're attending a conference in San Francisco. So maybe that might be email. And,
what was the second part?
Wanting to know if you're attending a conference in San Francisco.
Okay, I'm not sure which conference they're referring to, but not at this point. I don't know of a conference in San Francisco that I'm attending.
Okay, maybe they can send you a direct email.
Okay.
Next question, do you still participate in the consumer support group? And if so, how is it helping you, or does it help you in your recovery?
I definitely have participated in support groups in the past. In fact, I was part of an intensive outpatient treatment program for 2 years where 3 days a week I would go to groups for half a day every time I was there. And that was really helpful during that time. I was in a severe depression, and just being around people and learning the skills from the groups like cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy and a lot of other groups that we had, even art therapy I really enjoyed. So yeah, the support groups have been very helpful for me, and now I'm actually leading support groups. At work I lead a whole health group where I teach these principles of mind, body, and spirit health. And yeah, I do see a therapist regularly, and that's been very helpful, but at this time I'm not attending a regular support group for myself other than leading them.
Great, thank you for that answer. Would you like to share about your support group that you hold?
Sure.
Where it's located for those in San Diego?
Okay. Well, it's called WHAM, W-H-A-M, and that stands for Whole Health Action Management Group. And it's a curriculum created by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And I have kind of added my own information and materials to the curriculum. The group that I lead is at North Coastal Mental Health Center, and it's only open to clients of our clinic. But there are other locations that lead that same group. I know in Oceanside, Mariposa Clubhouse has that group, and there's other clubhouses, I believe, that have it. It's led by peer support specialists, and SAMHSA had special trainings for peer support specialists in San Diego to train them to be facilitators of the group. So basically we cover 10 whole health and resiliency factors, and a lot of them are the things that I talked about as my wellness principles. And then the last several weeks of the group, every person sets a whole health goal, and we all work toward achieving our goal with support from the group members. So we all kind of cheer each other on, and I always bring healthy snacks to every group too.
Great, thank you. That sounds fantastic for those in the neighborhood, for sure. That looks to be all the questions we have.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you very much, Serena, for sharing and giving us a little entry into your life and how you have become well. And I want to remind everyone that this webinar is being recorded. It will be archived on our website this afternoon. So if you missed something or if you would like to share with somebody, please direct them to our website under archive videos and you will see it there. So everyone have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you at our next webinar. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Debbie.